Alright. This was a nice surprise.
Yeah, say the least.
Nocturnal Animals was not supposed to be on any videos till next week.
This is correct.
But weirdly enough, it apparently went wide enough to come here.
I still can't explain how or why.
With Miss Sloane as well.
Yeah.
That's weird. And I think if you've been keeping track, you all know how excited I was about this, so let's just dive right into it. Our first movie, obviously, is Nocturnal Animals. The first time we've seen Tom Ford since 2009, in the movie world anyway, when he made A Single Man, which I have praised many times before. There was something that I heard about this movie before I went in. Thankfully, it was the very first scene, so nothing was, spoiled or anything. But I do wonder how I would have felt if I didn't have time to brace myself for this. What really sucks is I'm kind of afraid how much this might overshadow the rest of the movie. Because if people go, there was a surprising amount of people in there.
A lot more than I thought would be, especially
because this is not a movie that gets this kind of attention around here.
No, not at all.
So I'm wondering, after this whole movie, how many people are just going to go home and say, "Oh my God, that opening credit scene."
Yeah, that's a problem.
But I'd like to think there's enough investment to where people may have forgotten about it, if that's the kinds of images you can forget. Honestly, if people don't know yet, I almost don't even know if I want to say it here, but just in case somebody doesn't know yet. But yeah, just that's waiting for you. If you bring the family, bring all of them, bring the kids, bring everybody.
Oh boy.
Because I turned to you right before it started, I was like, I can't wait to see the reactions to this, and I didn't tell you what it was. So yeah, that's the opening credit scene, and then we go right into this, basically into an entirely different movie for the rest of the time. But that's the thing, is there's a lot of times in this movie where you feel like you're watching an entirely different movie than you may have been like 10 or 15 minutes ago. Normally, that's a huge problem, but here, number one, he just handles it so well, it's not a problem, and secondly, that's what the whole setup is, in a way. So yeah, if you're not aware, it's basically that Amy Adams and Jake Gyllenhaal were married, but they are no longer because she's married to Armie Hammer now. And she runs art exhibits and all that, and she's just one of the... all I have to say is she's in charge of art exhibits. You know the kind of person she is.
Yeah.
So Gyllenhaal has sent her a manuscript for his new novel, and it may or may not kind of echo what their marriage once was, in the form of a trashy thriller, with connotations and little hidden or not so hidden meanings in regards to their marriage and where he feels they are now and how they got to that point, as she reads through this and we see it play out on screen. It's a really cool concept. I like it a lot.
Very much.
And
so.
Of course, we were talking about this. Everybody talks about the whole I can't tell the difference between Amy Adams and Isla Fisher. Well, much like Gyllenhaal himself and Tobey Maguire in Brothers, with Jim Sheridan, Ford decided, well, let's go ahead and put that to rest and actually make Isla Fisher play Amy Adams.
Just brilliant casting right there. It's about time someone finally did it.
Honestly, the first thing I want to bring up that I noticed, once we see, even just when we get, when it says, Focus Presents and stuff like that, and we just see confetti, before we even get into that opening credit scene and what follows, I would just like to say the very first thing I appreciated immediately was, I've talked a lot about how much I love Ford's direction of A Single Man, and how there's just such, an elegance to how he handles it and brings to the story through how it looks visually. And something I really appreciated about this movie is how cinematic it looked from the get-go. Because we're having kind of a problem lately, and I hate to be one of these people, but really it's something I believe that came about with the digital age. And that is the fact that so many movies these days look like TV movies, or look like movies that shouldn't be on a screen. Like, just last night with Office Christmas Party, I was thinking that. A couple of weeks ago with Rules Don't Apply, I was thinking that. It's with the digital imagery now, it's really hard now to make a movie look like it's actually made for theaters. And this movie looks really, really cinematic in a really good way. So I was really happy to kind of notice that immediately and feel that. It's always a good sign when you feel stuff like that immediately, because then you're just right there, and then it's it's gonna hold on to you for as long as you go, if it keeps up what it's doing well. And while we're on the subject of praising him, I would also like to mention that it's very clear that this is a movie he was really passionate about making. I assume for a number of reasons, but one in particular stands out, and that is the fact that I'm under the impression that he intentionally left out any costumes that would be from his clothing line, because he didn't want to. That's really confusing if people don't know what Tom Ford did. Writing and directing is just a side job for him, which
is bad. I didn't know that.
But he said he didn't want this movie to feel like a commercial for his clothing line, so you won't see any of that in this. And I thought that was a step in a really good direction to show that you have that much, care for the story and how it's viewed. And so going into this other story, like I was saying, it's very interesting because the way the movie portrays it's this really brilliant, heartbreaking thing. And we know this and we feel this because we know the connotations that it has to the character, Amy Adams' character in her real life. Because, honestly, without that connotation, and people who maybe just aren't invested in it will probably just see it as we're cutting back and forth between Amy Adams reading a book and talking about her troubled marriage to this really trashy 90s thriller. And they're just cutting back and forth. And you would think it's this really weird thing, and I imagine some people would prefer one segment over the other.
Right.
Like, some people feel like we're cutting off the thriller for Amy Adams' marriage stuff, or some people think we're cutting off this story about her trying to find out what went wrong in her relationship, and what we later find out exactly what happened is interrupted by this thriller that seems totally out of place to somebody that's not really kind of taking it for the kind of double meaning thing here. And sometimes I do struggle to use the word subtle, but there are times where it's not blatant at all, and it's very kind of, you kind of get to put together what exactly in the story within a story relates to in her real life, and exactly how, whether it's really, really vaguely or really, really apparent. But there are some cases where it's, like this is something a lesser movie would be doing the whole time, but it only maybe happened once or twice here. Like, there was, like, the stuff where it's fading in and out between him sitting on the bathtub and her in the bathtub, and then the moment where it dissolves into, well, not dissolves directly, but there's a scene and then the following scene with her daughter in bed, where it's like, it's really obvious what they're trying to show here. But, and like I said, a lesser movie would have been, that's what the whole connotation would have been. It's like, you see this part that's happening in the fictional story? Well, I'm going to show you now exactly what that's referring to in the real life story. So I really like that they weren't, like I said, I still struggle to say that it's subtle, but it's definitely not, blatant and hitting you over the head with it. It does give you room to try to figure out how some things in the fictional story connect, which is really nice. Another thing I kind of noticed after a while was, well, actually not too far in, really. Another thing to separate the real life story from the fictional story is how, you notice everything I mean, not necessarily to a big degree, but in a way, the story within the story, pretty much everything is much more amplified.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the characterizations are, like, really, like, Aaron Johnson's character, it's very clear he would never exist in the real world.
No.
Because he's just, I mean, it depends on what movie you're in, but in the real world established at the beginning of this movie, Aaron Johnson's character would never be in this world. Probably not Michael Shannon's either.
No.
So there's that quality where you can tell they kind of have fun with the fact that they know they're in a fictional world. I mean, obviously the real world here is also fictional, but this is fiction within fiction. So we're we're in fiction land, so things are going to be a little amplified. But they do it just right. Like, there's never really anything that's totally overblown or anything. But you can tell that we are in a more real world and a totally fictional world that's inside some trashy novel. But like I said, though, I feel the need to keep mentioning, though we can view it that way because we've seen thrillers from the 90s that look exactly like that.
Yes.
The emotional impact really is given by what happens in the other segment. So it's really hard to imagine what these two would be like if they didn't coexist. They have to be in this one story because there's the impact one has relies on the other, just regardless of how vastly different they seem on the surface. I think that's really where the magic of this movie comes from, is all that stuff. And that approach, which Ford handles really well. I think it helps that he adapted it himself from the book. I think the book's called Tony and Susan.
Yes.
Which is a really interesting title, but going with the title of the book within the movie, Nocturnal Animals, is a much better title for the movie.
I agree.
But yes, when you actually see the movie and know the characters and how they relate to the others, Tony and Susan's an interesting title to go with for the story itself, the whole thing. So yes, so I do want to talk about the story within the story, for just a minute. Particularly this scene where everything gets set off. When, they're terrorized, Gyllenhaal and Isla Fisher and their whole family are terrorized by Aaron Johnson and his redneck buddies on the side of the road. And this is a really long scene that plays out really, really intensely. And there are so many aspects that go into this. Start with the fact that this is like... It's almost like a funny games type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing is that nobody has a weapon. Yet you feel so threatened by them. And it's like, this is the kid that played Kick-Ass. Surely he's, not going to be any trouble to anybody. Well, that's not the case at all. And because I had heard a lot of stuff about his performance before I went into it, which was interesting because I wasn't really quite, much as I like the Kick-Ass movies a lot, I wasn't quite sure how I felt about him as an actor when I went into this. Because there wasn't a whole lot of personality in Godzilla. He wasn't necessarily one of the more interesting characters in Savages. Every time I think of him, I often think of that ridiculous mustache he had in Anna Karenina.
Oh, God.
So I wasn't sure about that, and his short-lived Quicksilver, of course, who is forever in the shadow of Evan Peters. So I really wasn't sure what to make of him still when I was hearing about him getting these kinds of notices, especially in a movie where Michael Shannon's getting Oscar buzz. But yeah, this is he's one of those characters that makes you so nervous. He's uncomfortably funny. Like, he's doing things that are intimidating, but they're also ridiculous to the point that they're funny, like when he's doing his cat claws on the window and stuff like that, or when he's literally humping the ground. Amplified characterizations, you know what I mean now?
Yes.
But yeah, there's something, like I said, it's one of those cases where what he's doing is ridiculous and funny, but given the scenario he's doing them in, it feels more like you're laughing to comfort yourself because of how intense this scene is, and how you really don't know how it's going to play out. That whole thing about them nobody has a weapon in this scene. You really have no idea how it's going to play out. You just know that it's getting worse and worse as it goes, and you feel like something really bad is going to happen at some point to somebody or multiple people. And you just keep waiting for it to play out, and it just keeps going and going. And I mean that in a good way, the way it keeps going and going, because it's just, the more it goes, the more you just have no idea how they can get out of this or where it's going to lead. There's no real clue pointing in any direction. You just have to wait and see how this is going to play out. And yeah, you'll have serious anxiety issues over this scene. And that's really our starting point. And like just like the scene before that when they're at the party with Michael Sheen, and Andrea Riseborough, I think, was the other person. Where it just feels like yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to say. You just have to see it, but you're just watching one movie, and then before you can even realize it at all, you're in a totally different one. And that's basically how it is from scene to scene. It's really, yeah, you don't normally see things like this. I preface everything I say here with, and I mean that in a good way. So yes, I'm not really, yeah, as far as performances go, Amy Adams is very good. She's got this kind of 1-2 punch going on with Arrival right now. They came out, Nocturnal Animals' limited run was pretty much at the exact same time Arrival came out.
Right.
And then, of course, Gyllenhaal, who is... I praise him for, you know, how great he's been lately. He's had some near misses like Southpaw and some pretty much misses like Demolition. But this is the Gyllenhaal I'm really loving lately. Because, number one, he's playing two different characters. That have to be, even though they signify the same person, have to be played in two totally different ways, because obviously they're two different people in his lifetime, obviously. And yeah, there's like I said, there's so many familiar faces here. They only pop up briefly. Like Michael Sheen only has one scene. Laura Linney only has one scene. I mean, I hate to say it, but when I saw Laura Linney's name in the credits, it was just like, oh, I wonder how small her part is. Yep, one scene, just as I thought. She'll have a moment again. It'll be good.
There's other people in this movie too that just kind of come and go too, like Jenna Malone.
Yeah, I didn't even know she was in it until I saw her name in the credits. So yes, and it's very, and Armie Hammer's really just kind of there, but you know, that's, yeah, I do love how we were able to kind of, you have kind of two sets of actors here who are kind of establishing which world is which, and I think that was, I don't know, Michael Sheen can go pretty over the top when he wants to. He is the bad guy in the Twilight Saga, after all.
This is true.
And Underworld, let's not forget that. He has such a weird career, I swear to God. Who was the dude he played in Tron Legacy?
Yeah.
Man, his career's weird. And I mean that in a good way as well. So yes, there's really... it's hard to come up with something I dislike about this movie. It would just maybe be those moments where it went a little too obvious, and it's, this is what this means, and this... and all that, and this is what this signifies, and this and all that.
Well, there was that really interesting thing that you had to you stepped out for a second, and you missed the jump scare.
Oh yeah,
the Aaron Johnson jump scare that I thought.
Oh yeah, from what you're telling me, it's like
it was actually pretty cool the way it was executed too. Honestly.
Where it's like almost like they're like bleeding together or something.
Yeah,
one is trying to bleed through into the other.
Like someone else that Amy Adams works with is showing that she doesn't have much faith in her babysitter, so she has this little gimmick now on her phone where she can watch the crib at all times. And Amy Adams picks up the phone and looks at the kid. Next thing you know, Aaron Johnson's right in her face. She drops the phone and shatters it. And her response is, "It's okay. The new ones will be out in a week anyway." But that's how that works.
Yeah, worth noting. We're probably insulting him a little bit. His name is Aaron Taylor Johnson because he took half of his wife's last name.
We're just going to stick with Aaron Johnson for the time being.
It is funny that the 50 Shades Darker trailer was on this because his wife directed the first movie.
Yeah, and she stayed far away from this one. Go see this if you get a chance, seriously.
See, and the thing about it is I feel like it'll have... I was noticing that, and like I said, you got to think of where we're from. So right. I was really watching the people that were in the theater. And I don't... It's interesting to see how it will play out, because this whole... Because the story within the story is pretty, basic.
Oh, very basic.
Like, if the Nocturnal Animals story was a movie in itself, it would certainly not be. Like, and like I said, it wouldn't have, with those connotations it has with the other story, really adds the width to it and the depth to it. But I feel like we spend enough time within the story that I feel like, struggling to find a word here, a typical audience would probably be enough to be invested in. And
they were, strangely enough. I thought some of the people in the theater would tune out of it or bomb out, but everybody stuck through the entire thing.
They might just not be happy with the ending.
Yeah.
But which could mean a number of things, but I think...
I liked it.
I don't want to spoil anything.
No.
I think it's pretty clear it means one, but you can take it in a couple of directions.
Oh, yeah.
At least. Just depending on how much you really, really want to think about it. And I'm sure most people will be when they come out of it. Unfortunately, I cannot talk about Nocturnal Animals all night.
It's your...
Because now I have to talk about Office Christmas Party. So for starters, that title is off-putting immediately. Because you see a title like that, and your first thought is, I guarantee that's how much effort they put in the rest of the movie. I guarantee it.
Why are the words National Lampoon's not attached to this?
Well, the thing about it is, when it starts and the title comes up, I mean, not only is it a bland-ass title for a bland-ass movie, but when the title comes up, it looks like, it looks like something, like if you see a rough copy of a movie.
Yeah.
That's what the credits look like.
Oh God, that's a good point.
And I was alarmed at the very start with when a comedy, like I talked about this before, probably in Vacation. That's when I talked about this, if I had to guess. But I believe I was saying something along the lines of, when a comedy is going to be bad, really fast.
Oh yeah.
So we open with this scene with Matt Walsh and Bateman. Jason Bateman walks in and they make a joke about drinking before noon. And I was like, this is literally a scene from Horrible Bosses.
Oh yeah.
This is literally the conversation he and Spacey had. But forget it. They even brought on Jennifer Aniston because they really, really wanted to make a Horrible Bosses type movie. Clearly. But anyway, this scene with Matt Walsh, that is devoid of laughs entirely. And they're trying.
Oh, they really try.
They're trying, they are. But it's like every single, quick line delivery that's supposed to be this, one-off line that gets a chuckle or whatever, they just kept happening. And then it's one of those cases where a character says something, and then it cuts to the next scene real fast, because that line was supposed to be funny. Just silence. Just pure and total silence through this whole scene. And so, that was our start. And it's all, it's stuff like, one line is about divorce. There's a thing where, like, him and his family are superimposed on the bodies of One Direction.
That was
not
nice.
A sound in that theater. And then it goes on, and we meet T.J. Miller. I'm not a fan of T.J. Miller.
Yeah,
here's what this guy does. Honestly, I'm trying to wonder exactly how many blood vessels this guy has busted on camera from how hard he tries. Because he's really doing the whole... and it's not just this. He annoys me now in the way that Will Ferrell has been. And that is that he wants to carry over his comic personality all the time. Anytime you see him, like, on a talk show or something, he always has to be doing something random.
It's always a work.
And he carries that into this character. Probably all of his damn characters, but this is the only one I remember off the top of my head. There was Deadpool, obviously, but... well, we will always... Okay, if Transformers 4 gave us anything, it's that anytime I see a movie like Office Christmas Party, I can just go home and go to YouTube and watch the scene where he's vaporized.
Yes.
Violently. That's a violent death for a Transformers movie. And I'm glad TJ Miller's the one that received it.
Indeed.
So that moment when he's making calls in his office and he's wearing some stupid bear costume. A bear costume that never comes back.
Nope.
Because it was such a random moment. That bullshit. That's what he's like all about. That's his whole character every time he's on screen in any movie ever. He is the sole reason a lot of people couldn't stand Cloverfield. Remember that?
Yeah.
We can blame him for that. Forget the shaky cam. You wanted to puke because TJ Miller wouldn't shut the fuck up through that whole movie. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I don't mean to get personal, but I hate him. So, and he's a major character too. Like the whole,
Yeah,
he's the character that gets the big emotional arc. This is the kind of movie we're dealing with because he's Jennifer Aniston's brother, and Jennifer Aniston's all basically playing the less perverted version of her character in Horrible Bosses. She's the one. She hates Christmas. She's Brian Doyle Murray in Christmas Vacation. She wants to delete all the Christmas bonuses. She rips off the garland that's on the wall and throws it in the trash. And they have to... You obviously want to say something.
I really do. Today, thank you Wikipedia, TJ Miller was arrested on suspicion of battery against a driver of a car service company. He was released on his own recognizance after posting a $20,000 bail. That was today. That was while we were watching the movies today. He got arrested.
Some cops saw Office Christmas Party last night. While we were watching the movies today, he was being arrested. While we were watching Office Christmas Party last night, so were the cops that arrested him, I guarantee it. So anyway...
I thought you'd appreciate that.
This is also one of those movies with really forced pop culture references, too.
Yeah.
To the point that they're going to be so quickly dated, I can't even give you one off the top of my head immediately. But I remember acknowledging... There's a lot of pop culture references in this that I guarantee will have no meaning in, 3 months. So it's one of those. And then eventually, like I said, we try to have emotional story arcs for people. There is also a really, really damn forced conflict with Jason Bateman's character being offered a job by Aniston's, which he does not accept, but the whole conflict comes from the fact that he didn't say no either. And that's the point where people, fucking TJ Miller, for instance, he's like, no, wait, I can explain. And TJ Miller runs away sad. And then we got half an hour movie left just because he didn't stop to listen to Jason Bateman say that. And when we do finally get the moment where Jason Bateman gets time to say, I never said yes to the job, it turns into, oh, you didn't say no either. We gotta drag this conflict out as much as we possibly can. This movie is an hour and 45 minutes?
Yeah, oh god, it felt so much longer.
Yeah, this is clearly an 80-minute movie. I don't know where the fuck we got to 105, but... This bullshit. The pimp subplot. I don't know why... I don't know what Catherine Hahn was doing. I don't know what Amy Schumer was doing. But...
Making money?
Yeah, but whoever this was did not need to be in this movie as much as they were.
Her name is Jillian Bell. I've been looking her up here.
I saw her name on something else very recently.
She's in a lot of stuff. She was in The Angry Birds, Night Before, Goosebumps, Inherent Vice,
Night
22
Before
Jump
something.
Street.
I just watched The Night Before again the other day.
Bridesmaids is where it all started.
Then we have stuff like I'm gonna bring Amy Schumer back actually. There's this subplot going on with Randall Park and Vanessa Bayer.
Yeah.
Two people I love. Randall Park's great, and Vanessa Bayer is just adorable.
Yeah, she is. Very much so.
And they're doing that thing where they're the shy people in the office. And they meet each other at the elevator, and they're being real, shy, and they're like, hey, do you want to do this? And they're like, well, I don't know, do you? And we realize something is going to blossom, and that is probably that one of or both of them is a sexual deviant. We go through with Randall Park's character exactly what we went through with Ezra Miller in Trainwreck.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing.
She's also in Trainwreck, so that brings it back around, too.
And there's even, they don't use their Kate McKinnon well, which people should be put in jail for. It was kind of like Masterminds, where it was like, oh god, Galifianakis and Wig are in this. You know, because McKinnon's in it, I'll be okay. But they do that thing, and it's not her fault, because what clearly happens is they watch SNL, and they see her playing these weird characters that she plays, and they're like, oh, well, we'll just have her do that again. That's how we'll write it. That's how we'll create the character. That's how it'll be directed as well. So I don't blame her for that, but no. That's no. You're really not utilizing the fact that you have 2 Emmy winners in this movie. We're talking just people that just won Emmys in the last ceremony. I'm talking about Kate McKinnon, who was sadly wasted in more ways than one, and our other Emmy winner, Courtney B. Vance, who's been around for a long time, but you probably most have him in your head right now because he played Johnny Cochran in American Crime Story, which was fantastic. He is just incredible in. Like, when I think of Johnny Cochran now, I actually see Courtney B. Vance's face. Yeah, he's kind of that saving grace here, where it's like, there's always that one actor that kind of saves the comedy, and it's typically because it's a usually serious actor doing something really outlandish. There is a comic situation that involves him being the serious guy that they've got to win over, who wears the suits and he's all business, getting a shitload of cocaine blown into his face by accident, and the following repercussions to that. It's all very obvious, but, you know, he sells it.
Yeah.
And there is, so, yep, there was, I actually wrote something down here, and it just came into play as I was talking to you. Olivia Munn is in it. Olivia Munn is the love interest. What a surprise. And she pretty much never leaves an impression, ever. Unless I'm forgetting something, but I'm pretty sure not. And it's really funny it took me this long to bring her up, because the thing I wrote down here last night was, every time Munn shows up in the movie was when I remembered she was even in it. I kept forgetting she was even in it until she'd show up again. And she's supposed to be a major character. She's the one. This is another one of those movies where not just, you know, the pimp subplot and all the bullshit with Aniston and T.J. Miller being siblings who are at odds and whatever the fuck. On top of all that bullshit, the movie still tries to have a plot. The internet thing.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that was, and I really don't care.
It reminds me of, like, the spot in Office Space.
It really does not matter at all. But it's just, like, this is a movie called Office Christmas Party. And it has a big ending where there's, like, suspense, where people are waiting for something to go through. Remember how mad I was about the sword fight in The Boss?
Yes, I do.
A movie called Office Christmas Party doesn't need to have a fucking car chase in it.
No.
I feel fucking stupid just saying that.
It's in the trailer, too.
Does that make it less stupid or more stupid?
More stupid.
I don't know. So, yes. There are some moments where I felt like I was gonna get, like, one over or something, but it never worked. Like, the Courtney B. Vance scenes they do something in the movie that takes him out of it. That wasn't very smart, now was it? The funny payoff to that scene would have been he just got right back up. It just kept going. But no, they're like, well, you know, let's take somebody who may or may not be the saving grace of this movie and just write them out. Just literally push them out the door. But there were some scenes. The scene with Aniston and the kid in the airport is funny. And it's worth noting, it's really funny. I made a similar connection to this when I reviewed the actual movie, but it's worth noting that Jennifer Aniston's married to Justin Theroux, and one of the things she's carrying in the airport is a copy of Girl on the Train. And the scene with the Uber driver is funny. Only one problem. Scene with the Uber driver is really funny. That's another Aniston scene. Aniston's kind of the one that wins this movie, I think. And here's the problem, is that the scene with the Uber driver is funny.
Yeah, it is.
Trouble is that that's the problem with it. Because I guarantee this movie was shown to test audiences. While the test audiences slugged through this, they were like, hey, the Uber driver scene's funny. So the studio got that feedback and was like, oh, that means we need more of the Uber driver. Let's make another scene at the very end. And it's like, wow. You have something good, man. You have something good. And you're like, oh, okay, we have one good thing. Let's try to do that all the time. Because then that'll make us look better, right? That's not really the way it works. Sorry. Depending on the situation, but most of the time, no, don't do that. It's kind of like when, I don't know if they still do it now, obviously, but back in the day when, usually with animated movies, for their trailers, they'd have one scene that's supposed to be funny, and then you'll notice it throughout the trailer that character keeps coming back. And then when it says, like, you know, coming soon or comes out in December or something, that character they think is going to be a breakout is probably there doing some bullshit while it tells you the day that it comes out.
Flash in Zootopia.
That's basically how they treated the Uber driver. As you can tell, the Uber driver's in this for like 2 minutes, but I'm clearly upset about it.
I like the character, though. It actually worked, and then it worked too well, and I like, okay.
Thank you for that summary of what I just said.
I know. But to be honest, seriously.
That's about it, really. Aniston comes out of it looking the best, I suppose. Don't put car chases in a movie called Office Christmas Party. Don't put subplots about pimps with guns in a movie called Office Christmas Party. Don't put a plot about fucking Wi-Fi or whatever the fuck that was in a movie called Office Christmas Party. Here's an idea. Here's what happened. Was when the movie started, it was like a table where people were like taking cookies and shit. And I was like, oh my god, is the opening scene the start of the Office Christmas Party? Like, are we already in the middle of the Office Christmas Party when the movie starts? And the whole movie is, in fact, the Office Christmas Party? Because that would be new. That wouldn't be shoehorning in stupid shit-ass subplots. That'd be... I turned into Willow Stoke for a second, sorry.
It's alright.
You know, because we're on the subject of Christmas. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
But no. Let down. We have... There's a whole plot-driven reason why... I know that movies titled Office Christmas Party are the one time I'll call you out for trying to have a plot. Because I guarantee, no matter what you're going to come up with, it's going to be bullshit, and clearly nobody's going to care about it. And it will not matter whatsoever. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say anymore when a movie brings me to saying, stop having a plot. That's your weakness. Oh. So that's... yeah. That's what that is. Like if it was literally just wall to wall an Office Christmas Party with shenanigans going on, at least you get what you bargained for. Yeah. You could actually have the argument, what did you expect when you went in? I'll tell you what I didn't expect, and that was a fucking dumbass car chase in a movie called Office Goddamn Fucking Christmas Party.
Indeed.
Whatever. Our third movie is going to be Miss Sloane. We're kind of blowing right through this. Let's hope we can keep that up.
We'll see.
Miss Sloane, I wasn't positive. I knew about something about banning guns was what this plot was.
I didn't even know that.
Because when I was out of town while you were gone, and I saw Deepwater Horizon and Girl on the Train, both movies had this trailer on it. So I heard them back to back.
Oh, wow.
So I was able to kind of get a grasp on what it was about. And... okay, because really there's one thing to talk about with this movie. Yeah, 2 hours and 12 minutes of movie. There's really only one thing to talk about.
Okay.
We'll go into more things, but there's one that needs to be addressed right away. It's painful, but I've been in this boat before, so whatever. Miss Sloane, the title character, is played by Jessica Chastain. And Miss Sloane is one of those characters that's she has a Clive Owen and Inside Man monologue to the camera in the opening scene. She might as well have said, pay strict attention, because I choose my words carefully, and I never repeat myself.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that movie in years, and I remember that whole monologue.
We did the verses a while back, so there you go.
No, it didn't. Nope. So,
it's on the list.
It's clear that Miss Sloane is going to be one of those strong, independent woman characters.
Right.
You know. You could swear I have a dick, but I don't, and that's what makes me tough, and that's what makes you... I show up a room every time I'm in one type character. Which I'm fine with if it's handled well and played right. But here's the problem, is that this felt very similar to another Jessica Chastain performance I'm really not a fan of. And let it be known right away that I really, really love this woman.
Yeah.
A lot. She has performances that I absolutely, positively love. She made her scenes in The Help bearable by being in them. And her in The Tree of Life, she's like one of the great mother characters we've had in a long time. Well, and then there's like, okay, look, I know one of, if not her absolute most acclaimed performance of her career is Zero Dark 30.
Yep.
Honestly, I'm not a fan of her performance in Zero Dark 30. And the reason for that is the same reason I didn't care for her performance in Miss Sloane. And that is, to be totally honest with you, I can try. I saw Zero Dark 30 like 3 times. And for a movie that long, that's a lot. That's a lot of chances I gave that movie. It was also award season. I typically see them more than once, but that's beside the point.
Of course.
And it's just occurred... Miss Sloane was kind of the final nail in the coffin. I cannot and will not buy Jessica Chastain as the tough-talking, in-charge type. I cannot buy it at all. It's very... it's like watching Minnie Mouse try to play Clarice Starling. That's what it's like.
All right.
Because she's got this... In real life, you can tell she's got this real sweetness about her.
Yeah.
Like I said, for those characters that are really comforting, like her character in The Tree of Life, it really, really fits. And when, you see her really trying to show up a room, and that's the problem, is the word trying. Because Miss Sloane and... Oh my god, I forgot her name in Zero Dark 30. But they are characters that are not trying to be in charge. They just are when they walk into a room. I hate that line so much in Zero Dark 30. I'm the motherfucker who found this place, sir.
Maya.
It's like, yeah, that's it. It just not ring true to me whatsoever. This is clearly I mean, I'm not saying that people can't be both. But when I see Jessica Chastain play the characters like Maya or Miss Sloane, it's like I see a really sweet woman trying really, really hard to portray somebody who's really tough. Yeah. And it's not coming off natural at all whatsoever. And that's like in Most Violent Year you can throw into that too, where she was trying to be like a Lady Macbeth type or something.
Right.
God. And it sucks because I know she's a really good actress. And they keep giving her these parts that she's really not suited for. And that she really can't bring that kind of, presence and charge to those parts. Like even those moments when she has that sarcastic laugh. It's like just... I feel like I'm supposed to really respect this person for her drive and her strength. I'm just... No, I got nothing. I feel nothing for this character. And it's really because... It may be in the writing. It could be, but through the performance I can't tell. So I was trying to place other actresses in there. Honestly, in my opinion, who could have absolutely killed this part? Like, who could have just came in and just ripped shit apart and just walked away with the movie? Sandra Bullock.
Yep.
I would have loved to have seen in this movie.
That would have been great.
I
bet it'd do better too, box office wise, if that were the
case. The very first one that came to mind was Kidman.
Yep.
Especially 90s era Kidman. Like To Die For era Kidman. I could totally see. But I love her. I really do. But I cannot buy Chastain in these parts at all. and this is the character we're following, and we have to feel this way about for 2 hours and 12 minutes. You can guarantee that has an impact on the rest of the movie. And there's and it's, you know, that whole thing where we have to buy that she's the all business type all the time. There's even, I thought it was just gonna be just one scene. This scene where she has to basically be, just to show that she's all business all the time, not just in the work environment. So she comes home, and I guess her deal is to, I don't know if it's to loosen up, because the character never loosens up, but for one reason or another in her personal, whatever's going on up here, she has a man whore waiting for her in her apartment every time she comes home to fuck her.
Yes. That is the best way to put it.
And that's just how she rolls, I guess. And so she comes home and she's still all business with her new man whore. So I don't... The movie says escort, but I've seen the first Deuce Bigalow one too many times. It's like, all I can hear is Eddie Griffin telling me it's a man whore. Right. And so it really, really beats you over the head with it. It's like, this woman is all business. She doesn't fuck around. She's one of the dudes. She's so tough. There's even there's a very brief scene with Christine Baranski, which I thought was a cameo until she got a major credit at the end.
She got the end, though.
The end was the go. When she was like saying, like, you know, I think the only thing you're missing is a dick. It's like, yeah, this is like 50 minutes into the movie, too, when all the movie's been talking about is how tough we're supposed to buy her as. It's like, great, just keep fucking telling us. Maybe we'll feel it in the last 10 minutes, I don't know. And then there's even, they do that more than once, too. There's the scene where Christine Baranski says, you're only missing a dick. And then, like, right before or right after that, there's the dude in the office that's saying, like, I'll bet she pisses standing up. Just how badly do you want us to buy this? Do you know how unconvincing Chastain's performance is? So you're like, just keep writing shit in. We really need the audience to buy this. We can't. Yeah, and it's like after the guy says, he says, like, I'll bet she pisses standing up. I don't even piss standing up. And the girl beside him is like, do you even think before you speak? It's like, I don't know. Did the writers think before they put something on paper? I don't know. This movie's not telling me. No. But anyway, so that's how I felt about the central performance. Which is basically kind of an overall grasp on the whole movie. That's what the whole movie is. The whole movie is, look how tough she is. Mm-hmm. It's like, I hear you telling me that over and over again. I'm not seeing it, but maybe if you keep telling me, I'll be convinced at some point. That's clearly your way of thinking. I'll think that way too. Let's see.
They surround her with a big cast, too.
Yeah. A couple of people... there's a lot of people in the movie that we recognize.
Yeah.
But only a couple of them really come out of it as, this person was, you know, good in this. Because we got Mark Strong here.
We're back to Kick-Ass again.
Who I like quite a bit.
Same here.
And it's like regardless of my feelings on Tinker Tailor, he's really damn good in that. And I love him. He's so over the top insane in Kick-Ass. I love it. We quote him all the damn time. Yeah. But the problem is given, and it's not necessarily him, it's more so casting. He's the kind of person, it's kind of like why he was like immediately put on the ignore list for Lex Luthor. Mark Strong's one of those actors where, good as he is a lot of the time, he can come off boring because his casting is so obvious.
Yep.
Like, one thing that stands out immediately is, like, Kingsman. Where it's like, his casting in Kingsman is actually legitimately surprising, because he's a good guy in that movie.
Very weird.
But then every other movie, like that movie with Kidman and Colin Firth, Before I Go to Sleep or something, we saw it in theaters, and I
right
barely
before I
remember the
left.
title. And it's like, you know, it's not necessarily him that's boring, but he can just be a boring casting choice. And there's really not a whole lot he can bring to a role once it's on paper is an issue. Like I said, for movies like Kick-Ass or Tinker Tailor, definitely. But there are times like this where it's just like, he's a recognizable face, and that's good, but he's not somebody I'm going to remember is in this movie right away. We have John Lithgow, obviously, is kind of our person she's kind of trying to, you know, play verbal tennis with here. And this is yet another example of the accountant earlier as well. The biggest problem with John Lithgow being in movies these days is the fact that he's never in them long enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let's get, you know, one of the best actors we have that's alive, that's just so incredibly magnetic to pretty much everybody. I've never heard anybody say a negative thing about John Lithgow. It's like, let's just put him in a whole bunch of shit, but for like 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
It's like, damn it. No, the two people that do stand out are Gugu.
Of course.
Gugu's very good and has a very central part in the movie, to the point that she's pretty much what's going on with her character is pretty much the only time the movie is interesting, and it's in kind of brief segments.
She's got a very interesting story arc too.
And then Michael Stuhlbarg.
Yes.
This year, man, everybody's against Michael Stuhlbarg. Michael Stuhlbarg is everybody's enemy this year.
He's in 3 movies that were at the theater at the same time, but a rival left in order to get Miss Sloane, so we still have double Stuhlbarg.
It'd make more sense if you say we lost a rival to get Nocturnal Animals.
Yeah.
Because Amy Adams' face. And of course, you know, he's Doctor Strange's rival.
Exactly.
And here, he's Miss Sloane's rival. They're in the room, and he's like, well, you know, I'm going to take my... It's like... If you're on her team, cross the line. If you're on my team, you go to my side. They do that. They actually do that shit.
He's so good. I wish they cast him more in things.
I love when he's angry, too.
Yes.
You know who else popped up in here? Dylan Baker.
Yeah.
It was like he's barely there, of course. But it's like, hey, I feel like this movie's about to get interesting. When I see Dylan Baker's face, that's usually the case. Where it's like, okay, this movie may or may not be boring, but it's going to be more interesting now.
Right.
Because he's a kick-ass actor. I really love that dude. You know, I felt like he was going to be like a really cool part about the news anchor that's putting this... He's like the moderator of this debate, but then he's like gone. So it's like, this movie just keeps letting you down. And yeah, you would kind of think that's where a lot of this movie's interesting qualities would be, and like this whole, you know, gun control debate or whatever, gun banning debate in this case.
Right.
But that's always such a small fraction. We absolutely positively must have the man-whore subplot. We absolutely positively must have people in offices having the same conversations in 3 different scenes. We must have, you know... It's really... You know what this is doing? The script, the writer, is really trying to be Sorkin.
Oh, yeah.
And like for a while, I was trying to figure out if that was just my subconscious, because... Stuhlbarg is in this, he was in Steve Jobs. Sam Waterston and Alison Pill are in this, they were on the Newsroom. It's like, somebody's clearly trying to evoke Sorkin here. I don't know if it's Madden or the writer, but somebody's trying to evoke Sorkin here, and failing miserably.
Who's the writer?
A dude this script was on the blacklist. That's how this got made. Apparently very, very quickly, too. So, yes. And then there's another very interesting scene that could have taken this movie in a different direction, and kind of brings up the whole, both sides of the debate, where it's, when Gugu's life is threatened. And there's a dude that, you know, corners her and points a gun in her face. And he's like, you want to take my guns away? You want to try to take my guns away, are you? I'm going to use it on you. And you think, yeah, those are the kind of crazy assholes that gun bans are trying to do away with. But then, said dude is shot and killed by a civilian that had a registered gun on him. And then you're like, well, that's kind of why we need them too. And it's like, this is a really interesting setup for both sides of the debate.
It's like Crash.
And then they just abandon that.
Of course.
The whole point of that scene is for Stuhlbarg to feel like he's winning. And for Miss Sloane to say, well, great, now that he's got that on his side, we got to do something to go against it. It's like they have no interest in both sides. They want to do we're on one side, and any time it looks like this movie might have an interesting perspective looking at both sides, It just wants to stick with what it's doing and not deviate from anything, because this is a movie that doesn't have interesting things to say. Plain and simple. And yes, this is one of those movies where if somebody's going to have an Oscar clip, somebody's going to have a wannabe Oscar clip, the scene they really think is going to be their Oscar clip, we're going to know. You know who's going to let us know? A person who's very good at his job named Max Richter, who is most famous for, the piece On the Nature of Daylight, which we just talked about in Arrival. He composed the score for this movie, as he does many movies. And it was basically, Madden was with him, and they were like, okay, when we get to a big scene, the score has to completely take over. It's like that scene I was talking about with Lily Collins, Rules Don't Apply. It's like, this is their big moment. Completely overshadow their voices with the fucking music. That scene with the debate, where Chastain really thought she was getting an Oscar clip. It's like, yeah, just get as loud as you possibly can, because the audience absolutely must. We beat them over the heads and beg them and beg them and beg them to see her as a tough, strong woman. We gotta make sure we also tell them exactly when the big scenes are. So get that music going! Yeah, this is not... No, I'm not sure what people will get out of this movie, but I sure shouldn't get anything. So, but, a couple of performances, and, I know Chastain's got greatness in her, because she's shown it, but, just don't, not roles like this. Don't. I mean, yeah, it's always good to expand your horizons, but, it's, been well established. I know, I'm only speaking for myself, because people fucking love her in Zero Dark 30. Mm-hmm. But... I don't know. I'm interested to see how the people that love her performance in Zero Dark 30 think about this. If they feel the same about this performance or not. I'll have to... It's like, hey, you watched Zero Dark 30 lately? I don't really know any of those people. Nobody in my social circle is like, hey, man, I just watched Zero Dark 30 again the other day. Or remembers enough about it to say, yeah, fuck it. Our next movie is going to be Incarnate, a movie you witnessed this firsthand, a movie I forgot I'd watched right after I'd watched it.
Yep, exactly.
So, that's not even an exaggeration.
No, it's not.
So, because there was about 45 minutes in between Incarnate and Office Christmas Party, and I was the only one of us that watched Incarnate. Not only that, I was the only person in that theater. Mm-hmm. And so we were killing time, and I had immediately forgotten I had been at the theater for the past 2 hours. Swear to God. So Incarnate begins. Incarnate is a supernatural exorcism horror movie about a possessed kid, brought to you by WWE Studios. Let me know when you completely walked away from that summary. Because I'm sure it was any one of those things. But no, we're not done with possessed kid movies. You know what? I honestly take a bit of offense when they release movies like this so close to Christmas. It's like, this is the time where everybody's like happy and shit. And you release, bad or not, where you release movies like Office Christmas Party. But it's like, no... too many shitty horror movies were out in October, and we couldn't get our own out there. So instead of waiting for the January dump, we actually feel we're important enough to release a movie like this in December.
Yeah.
Fucking idiots. Krampus makes goddamn sense. But this... No, not at all. So anyway, but the movie begins, and it's clear, Hollywood, okay, I know okay, forget everything I just said. I know exactly why this movie was released in December. Because this is the season for giving and being charitable, right? Well, Hollywood was being very fucking charitable when they bought this script and said, yeah, we'll make this. Not only that, we'll put fucking Aaron Eckhart in it. Ooh. And Maria Full of Grace, Catalina Santana Moreno, is in this. Swear to God, she is. Of course, she was in that really shitty romance movie, The Hottest State, that Ethan Hawke movie. You're the best, Ethan Hawke, but that movie's a fucking piece of shit. And we also have, what's her name from Game of Thrones. Why is she in this? Because she's on Game of Thrones. She's Guy Pearce's wife in real life. That's how I know her, honestly.
Reese Van Houten.
Yeah, if we're being totally honest. I'm pretty positive she's Guy Pearce's wife in real life. Was there anybody else? Was there a character actor for exposition? I know there had to have been.
The only name, David Mazouz.
No, that's the kid.
And the only person that's on the cast list is the brilliant bit part from Mark Henry.
Okay, onward.
So no.
So anyway, but the weird thing is that when this movie starts, it kind of wants... It's clear it's a horror movie and a possession movie. But it also, like, wants to be a domestic drama. But the really weird thing about this is that it sets up the domestic drama part still as if it's a horror movie. Because, let me give you an example. It's one of those cases where the dad is Jack Torrance. He was, like, drunk and pissed off, so he accidentally broke the kid's arm, and now they're fleeing. It really is. Like, it's exactly Jack Torrance's setup. So they've run away now and they're staying by themselves, and the dude's calling up and he's like, hey, he's my kid as well. You know, you help me talk to him. You answer your phone. And it's just over and over and over again. And so the kid gets the idea. He takes the phone while his mom's asleep, and he's looking through all these voicemails, and he sees the callback option. And he's like, I don't know, I haven't seen my dad, and I don't know what's going on. Should I talk to my dad? Should I maybe call my dad back and see what's going on? Should I talk to him? Just normal domestic drama, right? But what happens here is, when he's debating that, the camera is slowly zooming in on the call back button while, like, horror music plays. Like, building horror music. There's nothing horror-related happening here. They use the horror music as this kid debates whether or not to call his dad back. Yeah. That's right. Okay. So, are you glad you missed this yet?
Yes, very much so.
That's before the title's revealed. So anyway, he ends up possessed by a homeless person. Then we get the title. Then Aaron Eckhart's in this nightclub, and it's kind of like a fake-out thing. When, basically, it's it's like The Cell and Flatliners and Inception. Because he doesn't... Oh, first off, mind you, you know how people are all about their, I'm not a typical horror movie, I go against the typical terminology because I'm special. This movie's different. So, what Aaron Eckhart's problem is he's like, well, the thing is, he's obviously when he's inside people's heads, he looks like Aaron Eckhart as we know him. But when he's in the real world, because he was in a car accident that killed his family, because that's not a real backstory, he's in a wheelchair, and he's wearing a Mickey Rourke wig, and he just looks real dirty, and he's pissed off and bitter all the time. And the thing is, oh, you're going to perform an exorcism, right? This is clearly an exorcism movie. We're going to say exorcism. Let's just get past that. No! This movie's different. What's going to happen here is I'm going to really, really hate religion and God and all that stuff. So I don't say the word exorcism. I say I evict them from people. This movie's such a special little being, isn't it? We just love it, and we pet it for its originality and its differences in the genre. You know what's going to be really different is when it's dead completely. But anyway, let's go on. So yes, as I was saying, he evicts them by attaching himself up to a bunch of shit, basically getting onto the verge of death, Flatliners, and going inside their head, Inception in The Cell, and basically scaring the demons out of them. Like going inside their head and saying, hey demon, fuck off. And shitty horror movie, PG-13 I believe as well. So, when we're inside their minds, how exactly do we know who the demons are? They have those deep electronic voices and their eyes turn black. Oozing originality this movie is. We have never seen this movie before whatsoever. I am not wasting all this goddamn time talking about this movie I have seen over and over and over again. That envelope just gave me more
I buy that.
focus than this. So, and as far as his backstory goes, about his, that's just typically the backstory thing. It's like, hey, look, this is what, so people can't say we don't have character development. This dude's family's dead. Haha, now we have character development. Well, they took this a little too many steps too far. I guess because the screenplay needed filler, because there's clearly not enough stolen ideas to put together to make this, to just piece this together. What we have here is pretty much in every scene, he brings up or somebody else brings up that his family was killed in a car accident. That's only because the spirit that he believes is chasing him is the one that, like, killed him or something. Like, the spirit he's looking for possessed this woman and then drove into them and killed them, and now this spirit has, like, a grudge or something. Like, the spirit killed his family or something. Or no, he killed the spirit's family. It's kind of a revenge thing, you see. That's not true, but it should be. It'd make the movie more interesting. It's kind of like the plot of Jaws the Revenge. It's like, how the fuck does a shark get revenge? And swim from one place to the other? It doesn't matter. I'd much rather be reviewing Jaws the Revenge right now. At least that'd be a little fun. But this is just boring. It's just a checklist of the same bullshit. And it's, yeah, anytime, and not only do they just have to talk about it constantly, but we get flashes of all the newspaper articles. Just all the time. That's all this video wants to fucking talk about, is the fact that his family's dead. Like I said, I think it's just filler, because they don't know what else to put in it.
Probably.
They couldn't come up with, like, a scary scene or something. God forbid. So anyway, and yes, there's plenty of ridiculousness to be had. Take, for instance, the moments that are supposed to be real fast and suspenseful. Like when he's actually in their heads, and their idea is to basically run away from the demons by causing things to appear. So, like, you make a door appear, and you go through that door, and you make a window appear, and you jump out that window, voila, you no longer have demons in you. That's the setup. But, how do you make these doors appear, you might ask? I swear to God, in the most straight-faced, panicked voice possible, in the most straightforward business voice possible, but urgent. That's the word I was looking for. Urgent. He stopped. They're running from the demons. The eyes are turning black. He turns to the guy. He says, "Quick, what's your favorite color?" What? What color's your car? What color's your favorite shirt?
The heck?
Just absolutely, totally straight-faced. Because the color he thinks of is the color that the door will be. It makes the door appear.
Ghostbusters?
It was reminding me of, what was that bullshit in Constantine? It's like, I need a mirror that's like 40 feet tall or something.
I only remember one thing from Constantine to this day.
So anyway, and that's kind of what this whole movie is. This movie does not have the material at all for a feature-length runtime. So it's just kind of doing this bullshit. And honestly, let me just talk about the fact that, I was talking about The Cell, Flatliners, Inception, The Exorcist. The fact that this movie is ending is very, very similar to an ending you might know. Something was brought up, not necessarily to me, but I was reading it the other day. Actually, this was a while back, but somebody had an argument. You know how when I do a lot of reviews that are very derivative like this, it's usually just a list of all the different movies they managed to take from and put in their own movie. That's what my whole review of Big Hero 6 was, because that's all Big Hero 6 was. So somebody's argument was, if a movie takes all these different parts of all these other existing movies, is the whole product really stealing? Well, let me tell you something. And I know any time I bring up stealing from other things, everybody's going to throw the fucking Tarantino argument in my face. I guarantee that. But there is a big difference. And that is the fact that, first off, Tarantino uses many styles, but he has his own stories. Okay? He's able to make something. He's able to take parts very, very obscure parts of other things that we may or may not recognize. But even though he has all those homages in his movies, he has a signature. When you're watching a Tarantino movie, you know you're watching a Tarantino movie. Tarantino is like his own goddamn genre. The people who bring that up and say he's stealing just don't particularly care for his work and are desperate for an argument. There are people who have legit arguments, but the people who are really, really desperate for arguments will do the whole, he just steals stuff from other movies things. They're not movies I've seen, or they're not movies I'd ever be able to tell you about. I only know this because I read it somewhere. That's their argument. But here, everything is so incredibly blatant to where it's actually like the dude is just watching a movie. It's like when you literally cheat off someone's paper when you're taking a test, is what it feels like when you watch movies like this. To where there is not a single original thing in the movie. That's when you know you have a problem. And even then, it's more like yeah, Tarantino might use a camera angle, or a zoom in, or a piece of music. But the thing is when you look at movies like this, and you're like, you know, I want to go see another... When you go to a movie, you say, I want to go to a new movie. That's why you go to the theater for a movie that has just come out. You want to see a new movie. You don't say... Like, let's say a new album gets put out. And you say, like, you know, I would really... It's kind of nice if people want to put out new and original stuff. But honestly, I just prefer a greatest hits album. And that's all I'm happy with. That's what it feels like when people just make movies like this that are just fucking pieces of a movie, and the whole product is just pieces of other movies. I say greatest hits album. This is not, these aren't the greatest hits of these genres. This movie, I swear to God, before he gets possessed, before we see the title of the movie, we have the scene where the kid's here looking out the window, but the camera's back here, so that a shadow can walk across it when a loud sound happens. That scene happens before we see the title of the movie. That's how devoid of any thought this movie is. It's just bullshit. I don't know why this movie exists. Nobody's fucking watching it.
No. It'll be gone quickly. I'm surprised it didn't leave this week, honestly.
And Aaron Eckhart was so devoted to it. 2 years ago, when he was promoting I, Frankenstein on Howard Stern, he was talking about how he was going to be playing a guy that was confined to a wheelchair. So he went all out. He dressed up as a Vietnam veteran in a wheelchair, did all this research, and would go out in public and act like an angry person in a wheelchair just to see the kind of responses he'd get from real people. 2 years later, lo and behold, all that preparation, all that human experience was for this movie. I'd also like to bring to attention real quick, you know that whole thing about how I evict them, I don't exorcise them because that's religion shit. I don't deal with religion. What do you think he uses to get rid of the demons? A cross.
Of course.
It's the fucking poster! It's the poster!
This is true.
How does this happen? How do these get made? Who is responsible for this? How much are these people getting paid for this? It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible that this happens.
But on that note,
our last movie is going to be Skiptrace. A movie you probably saw hanging around Redbox. A movie that totally would have had a wide release in 2004. And I'll tell you why, because if you don't know what Skiptrace is an action comedy. An action comedy starring Jackie Chan and Johnny Knoxville. Where was this movie 12 years ago? I don't know.
it probably would have made money then.
Yeah. So, and really, it's just another Jackie Chan movie. It's another Jackie Chan teams up with an American and shenanigans happen. Not even always an American. That time was Steve Coogan in the Around the World in 80 Days remake. So, yes. And it's very simple. The plot's very lazy. To the point it's so simple I don't even really remember it much.
That's good stuff.
Knoxville is a gambler that just hangs around in a casino, and he tries to pick up women. There's a scene where he's on a plane, and he's getting all the flight attendants to shed tears for his heartbreaking personal story. Turns out his personal story is him. It's the Notebook. He's just describing the Notebook, only passing it off as his own life. And that's just what he does. He just gets into trouble with like mafia heads and all that other shit, or crime bosses or whatever. I think they were Russian actually, so whatever they are. And then he witnesses a murder. And this murder that he witnesses just happens to tie in with this case that Jackie Chan's on, who's able to track him down. And then the movie basically turns into Bulletproof. Remember Bulletproof with Damon Wayans and Adam Sandler?
I like Bulletproof.
Yeah, this movie's that movie.
Oh.
Up to and including the desert. They're even in the desert.
Yeah, I'm seeing it in the pictures here on the posters.
Okay, there are a few things about this movie. I had some decent hope for it, because it's like, I could use a Jackie Chan action movie. I like Johnny Knoxville quite well in most movies. Like, I was trying to think about it. I don't think I've disliked Johnny Knoxville in a movie yet.
He's very underrated.
Yeah, and even in movies that aren't that great, and usually he's in some pretty decent movies too.
He plays very well against type too.
And so, but even so, there were some things that were raising some red flags at the start here. Like, for instance, it comes up and it says, like, this company presents, and it says, like, a film by Rennie Harlin. Rennie Harlin, the director of, like, Cliffhanger and Die Hard 2 and The Long Kiss Goodnight. These crazy-ass action movies. He's gone off the rails a bit. He made, like, that Hercules movie with Kellen Lutz. He made The Covenant, which is a guilty pleasure. But so, yeah, his Exorcist movie wasn't very well received, obviously.
Oh,
so to the point that they let Paul Schrader remake it however he wanted to. Remember that whole fiasco?
I do.
So anyway, and then it says, like, a Rennie Harlin film, Jackie Chan, Johnny Knoxville. These are just white letters on a black background over silence.
Really?
And I was like, hold up. A Jackie Chan action movie with Johnny Knoxville by the director of Die Hard 2 starts off with credits like this. This is a little too quiet. Something is wrong. Something is missing. But then it faded in, and then it just kind of started in. It's like, oh, you were a little late to the party, I guess. And then they have this opening scene when Jackie Chan's on a mission. It looks like the set from The Winter Soldier when he's on the ship. And then this dude that's a friend of his is like, oh, I got a bomb strapped to me and I can't save myself. Here, take this watch to remember me. Here I go. And he commits suicide, falls down, explodes. And Jackie Chan's all, no, my friend. And then we get the opening I would expect for a buddy action movie. Where it's like the animation that's comic booky. And we got the music playing. And it's like, okay, this is weird. Tone-wise. We start off way too quiet. We see a tragic suicide. Then we show the beginning credits for a buddy action movie. I'm a little confused. And then it becomes very inconsistent with that stuff. Because we get this whole Jackie Chan thing. This goes on for like the first 15 minutes. Where we get some big Jackie Chan action scenes. And then it goes back to our introduction to Johnny Knoxville. Where he's hanging upside down on the lane of a bowling alley and they're like throwing bowling balls at him. It's like the hockey pucks and running scared.
It's Jackass. It's back to his normalcy.
But that's the thing is, we have this Jackie Chan moment. These scenes where he's in a Jackie Chan movie. There's nothing out of the ordinary. There's no narration. There's no real, following or anything. It's just him and some big set pieces and some, setup for the plot. After all of this has gone by, we're introduced to Johnny Knoxville, and he's hanging upside down in this bowling alley, and then he looks into the camera, and it pauses. It's one of those cases we see every time, where it pauses, and he says, I'll bet you're wondering how I got to this point. Let's go back and see how I got here. Yeah. I'd maybe expect this at the beginning of a movie. The character we were following, if we were following his character entirely, maybe. But I've been watching a Jackie Chan movie for 15 minutes. Why is Johnny Knoxville telling me in narration, let's rewind so I can show you how I got here? It's one of those things where we literally rewind and then we have to play all the way back through it. And it's like, honestly, I think I caught everything in the rewind thing. We don't have to play all through it in regular play. We don't, really.
You're expecting to hear the Jackass theme?
Yeah. And then for this one, it's kind of like Wild Card, that Jason Statham movie.
Yeah.
With Michael Angarano. It was kind of like that. It kind of felt like in the casino scenes. And then once again, obviously they eventually meet up and then it goes forward. Once they are together, once they are a team, the movie's fine. And honestly, when it was just a Jackie Chan movie without Johnny Knoxville, it was fine too. There's a really cool, like I was talking about, I'm going to talk about this someday. It's already been shot. Sometimes people can't handle Jackie Chan very well. You really have to know how to shoot his stuff and really show it off if you're going to use him. Let him actually do his damn stunts. Because that's what he does. That's what he's here for. That's what he wants to do. I mean, yeah, he's not as high-flying as he was, but he's really not letting his age be a factor. He is saying fuck you to time. Like, he's still going right in on all this stuff. Once again, we end on a blooper reel. At one point, he walks away with his damn leg broken. And then he just comes right back. The dude is still in there. Further proving why he deserved that honorary Oscar he just got. So, and then there's this really awesome scene when he's like on the top of a building and it's falling over. And so he kind of has to go, and then he's amidst all this, and the buildings are starting to fall over like dominoes. And he's having to jump from building to building before the next building collapses it. And it's a really cool scene. It's like something you would have seen in one of his older movies. Scenes that are probably way too cool for a movie like this. There's also a classic Jackie Chan moment when he has these big Russian dolls, and he's fighting one of our antagonists, and she punches one of the dolls and it breaks, and obviously the next one's under there. And he just keeps using them as a shield, and they keep getting smaller. That feels like such a classic Jackie Chan moment. Which is great, like his, I was trying to remember, like the Project A movies. It felt like it would have been in something like that. But then, or those ones he started putting out in the 90s, like First Strike and Who Am I and Super Cop and all those. So yeah, so it's really good to see that Jackie Chan here. But then, and of course, obviously with Knoxville being his counterpart, it's gonna be comedy as well. Which isn't out of the ordinary for Jackie Chan, even when he's by himself. A lot of his movies kind of had that, comedic quality to them because they're just so crazy and over the top. But there's still, a bit of a dated silliness to this. Like there's some moments where it's, like, yeah, I probably would have found that funny when I was 5, but but even there's some scenes that sneak past you, like when he's fighting the two guys at once, and at some point all of them have been hitting the balls, so the fight just kind of stops simultaneously so they can react to that before they continue. It sounds childish, but the way it's executed is surprisingly funny. And Knoxville has some actually funny lines. One that stands out is when it looks like they might be going to prison, which sucks. And it's late in the movie, so Knoxville tries to cheer up Jackie Chan by saying, "No, man, prison will be easy. We'll get Jack, get some tattoos, maybe meet Morgan Freeman."
That's funny.
There's a funny segment where they have to, obviously with Knoxville, there's going to be a culture clash when he's in China. So there's this segment where they have, like, this thing where they're very much blocked off, and before the girls will let you go by, you have to sing. It's like a tradition. And it kind of turns into the, Nobody Leaves This Place Without Singing the Blues scene in Adventures in Babysitting. So there's a lot of good stuff in here that's really good. The only problem is just the plotting gets pretty lazy, and like I said, some of it feels like it's a little out of date as far as that probably would have been fun and original 12 years ago, maybe not so much now. Another thing I had trouble with, maybe there's something wrong with my eyes, I don't know, but I could have sworn there was dubbing in this movie. But it's kind of hard to tell. Number one, because Jackie Chan obviously always dubs for himself. But then there are cases where it looks a lot like bad dubbing, and it's distracting. But then there are other scenes in this movie where they do in fact speak Chinese to each other. Multiple times. I'm not sure technically what was going on. I don't know if Harlan thought maybe there was too many subtitles, so some of it's dubbed and some of it's not. I don't know, maybe I'm just seeing things, but I could have sworn, especially at the beginning there was some kind of dubbing going on that just sometimes was there and sometimes wasn't. I don't know. But still, So yeah, there's some great action scenes in it that are on par with his classic stuff. That are probably way too good to be in a movie like this. But it's still definitely enjoyable enough. Like I said, especially if you're a fan of both of them, this will work for you just fine. It'll be nice in passing, and then you can send it on its way.
Alright. That's going to end another edition of AJ's Movie Reviews. Next week, Rogue One, finally. Collateral Beauty is going to be on there, and we hope some other things as well. So we'll see.
Some Nocturnal Animals-esque surprises would be nice.
Would be nice, and looking at what's coming in limited for the next several weeks, and I'm hopeful that something comes our way.
All right.
So that being said, before we end, as always, we need to do some star mounts. Nocturnal Animals.
3.5.
Office Christmas Party.
1.5.
Miss Sloane.
2.
Incarnate.
I was going to be generous and say 1.5, but just go 1.
Skiptrace.
2.5.
Alright. So this week on Versus, Eats Meets West, obviously we've already talked about Jackie Chan today, so apparently we're going to, since you pretty much let the cat out of the bag, we're going to be talking about him again later this weekend, so stay tuned for more information on that. Saturday will be a surprise for you guys. May have a sip and snack, may have some Ashley, may have both, who knows. Later tonight, obviously we'll be... check out some other stuff on the network. We have some good stuff coming. Our Oscar prediction video, where we're going to hit every category, is coming the next couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. Got a lot of verses coming your way. There's a lot of good content. So if you like what you're seeing, click like on our Facebook fan page at Podcast Network, Zazzle at Podcast Network for merchandise, and Twitter at Podcast Network, Patreon at Podcast Network. So pretty much Podcast Network is the word. So that being said, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?
That's it.